Oh, hello, how's it going?
How's it going, bye?
This really handy publishing, huh? It's some good show all about making books. Now, we're not bookies, at least not during the day, but sometimes we're making books and getting paid for it. So this is my boss, Bruce Walsh, and he's the guy that pays me to make your books, make you not throw up when you look at them. So there's Bruce, take it away.
It's awfully hard to jump in after Duncan's had his say. He's one of those people. He's a lovely Newfoundland lad, but of course he's known here as a legendary book designer. Where we left you last, we had discovered the telegram from Jimmy Cagney in which he said sensational writing. And so, as you'll see, we've actually put sensational on the cover by Jimmy Cagney, which is really quite thrilling. Initially, it was called Making of the Theatre. It's Fists Upon a Star, Making of the Theatre. And we thought that that wasn't evocative enough. It really didn't tell us why I would be interested in picking up this book. So we needed the subtitle to actually give us more context. So we ended up with Fists Upon a Star, a memoir of love, theatre, and escape from McCarthyism. The other big change that we made was that originally the book was going to be a paperback title, but we made the decision to go cloth. We're a new house, and therefore we're trying to build our profile. And you're much more inclined to get a book review if your book comes out in cloth as opposed to paper. So we really made the decision to bring the book out in cloth because we're trying to get as much review attention as possible.
So for me, when I get involved in the process, designing the cover is one of the very first things that I do with a book. We need to have a cover for our catalog, which is usually produced well before the actual inside pages go into production. We meet really early in the process with the editors and all the interested parties here at the press to sit down and talk about the books that are coming up, how we want to position them, what materials do we already have that we can turn into a cover, what stuff do we have to look for. So that's really when the cover design starts, and it's months and months and months in advance of when we start working on the book. Sometimes when we meet, we come up with ideas. Sometimes the idea completely changes throughout the process.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's no way we can't have these in there.
Yeah, they're too
Really,
important. Those
yeah.
are really...
If they end up on the cover, I say don't put them in. But if they don't end up on the cover, then they gotta go in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the cover design really starts up here and in a conversation so that we can talk about the tone of the cover, the message that we want it to convey, or the emotional feeling we want it to convey, what's going to be on it in terms of title and subtitle, and those things are really important, what's going to be highlighted, and with those kind of general directions, I'll go away and start playing around with as many different ideas as I can. The author has some input into it. Not as much as I think most people believe, but the authors are really close to the subject matter, so hearing what their ideas for the cover are really useful for us. They may not necessarily be the one we go with, but they know the material in a way that can often give us a starting point, or occasionally they've nailed it. They know what it should be, and we just take it and finesse it. So while the cover design is ultimately the publisher's domain, we want our authors to be happy because we want them to promote our books, and we respect, the input that they can bring to the process. In the beginning, I'm not making things really tight. They're like sketches. Some designers will sketch on paper first. I like working on the computer, and you just start playing this image here, this text here, moving it around, and sometimes through that process of playing, things will present themselves that you hadn't considered before. But I need to have some guidelines, which is what those initial discussions are about. Once I get these ideas together, we'll meet, talk about them, decide which one we like and which one I want to push forward. And at that point, it's usually Bruce and I and the editor who sit down and sort of start to fine-tune things. Sometimes, like in the case of this book where it goes from paperback to case-bound, lots of changes have to be made, but the idea that we ended up with was a sort of timeline where we had an elderly a photo of the subject on the cover and a very young one on the back. So the image wraps around the book and creates a timeline from young to old. People may pick up on that, they may not, but having that content in there, having those little details help you feel that it's right. And so much of what I do is intuitive, from placement to content. If it feels right, I know it's right. So now that we had a sense of what the concept was going to be and what the visuals were going to be, then we knew we really had to nail it with the back cover copy. And I rely on the best back jacket copywriter I've ever known, which is Mr. Walsh.
That's quite a bit of text. That's quite a lot of text, and you really don't, in some ways, want that much text, but it tells such a good story. So up here, this was what we wrote. It wasn't very much. Then we have the second quote, which is really beautifully evocative of what the book is. And then we have a third quote, which is really sort of brings it all home. So a lot of text, something that I would often avoid, but I want people to understand this story. And I think, in fact, if they go to the bother of picking up the book and turning it over and reading it, I would say there's a very high chance that they're going to buy the book.
So it works like a headline that way to sort of draw people down in so they can start mining the content. And when you're designing a book, you're thinking about how people are going to pick it up. You're thinking about how they're going to navigate through it and what's going to guide them down to the information you're trying to communicate. So those are a lot of the things that I have to think about when I'm putting the pieces into a product that people will use.